Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Business of Fun podcast. I'm your host, Dave Wakeman. Today's episode is brought to you by my friends at Booking Protect, the global leaders in refund protection. Any listing, any sector, anywhere, Booking Protect has you covered with the world's most comprehensive refund protection product. To find out how you and your organization can offer your guests a better buying experience, more customization, peace of mind in their purchases, and how you and your organization can create a new revenue stream, visit www.bookingprotect.com. Once again, that's www.bookingprotect.com. The global leaders in refund protection, who I should add, since this is the week leading up to INTIX, you'll be able to find us at INTIX in the exhibition hall. Booth number 204, I think we're right next to Ticketmaster. If you're going to be at INTIX, come see me, Simon Mabb, Kat Spencer. If you're interested in getting together, grab a cup of coffee or a drink or something, send me an email. It's my name, Dave, at davewakeman.com. Put the subject INTIX in the subject line, and we'll make sure we get together. Simon's going to be giving a talk on how you can use customer review sites to grow your business. I'm going to be talking about revenue. I'm going to be doing a revenue reinvention workshop. I'll also be on the Ask the Consultants panel. I'm part of the INTIX technology working group committee, and I'm going to be on a panel with Andrew Thomas, my good friend and the founder of the Ticketing Professionals Conference in Birmingham, England, on Let's Act More Like Airlines, which is not a joke. It's how can we use the ideas that airlines use to be more effective at making money and offering customer service through the buying process to our guests and our fans. So check us out at INTIX. If you're going to be around, make sure you send me an email, dave at davewakeman.com, and we'll get together. We'll grab a cup of coffee or have a chat. On that note, my guest today is somebody you should also check out at INTIX, Nick Begley from AudienceView. Nick is doing a couple sessions. He's going to talk about shareable moments, which he's going to lead into word-of-mouth marketing, and he's also going to lead a panel called Ask a Boomer. Nick is one of the marketing people at AudienceView, and in this podcast, we talk a lot about INTIX. We talk about our shared friend Maureen Anderson and the things she's done to make INTIX a must-attend conference. We talk about Nick's his sessions. We talk about his marketing philosophy and about how you add value. We talk really interesting conversation about how he still maintains connection to the University of Central Florida, even though he now lives in New York City, and some of the lessons that all of us can learn about the way they use social media to engage with their displaced fans. We talk about his philosophy on data and how some of the clients that he works with and sees use data in an actionable way. We get into quite a bit of stuff. I think you're going to find this conversation pretty interesting, and it actually went longer than the quick hit that I thought it would. So enjoy my conversation with Nick Begley from AudienceView on the Business of Fun podcast. I want to welcome my friend Nick Begley from AudienceView to the Business of Fun podcast. Nick, what's happening?
Hey, Dave, how are you?
Oh, man, I'm good. Like I was telling you when we first started talking, I'm finally thawing out. I was frozen in my office here for a couple of days, so everything's good now. Just getting excited for INTIX next week. So I wanted to thank you for coming on because I wanted to spend a few minutes with people I know who are going to be at INTIX. So maybe expose them to a new audience so that people at INTIX will take a chance and stop by and see you, check out your session, do all of those good things. So thank you for being here.
Sure, yeah, and I was doing the math as related to INTIX, and this is going to be my 13th conference that I'm attending for INTIX. So it's something that I set my calendar by it, and every January I know wherever INTIX is heading, I'm heading. So it's been a really great to see the evolution of the conference as well, and their continued focus on networking, education, and again, the value of attending the conference is so critical because the budgets for professional development have been slashed, and oftentimes you're only able to attend 1 to 2 conferences a year. So I really enjoy, what Maureen Anderson has done around focusing on content and focusing on networking. Those are the two critical components of, putting on a great conference. And it adds value to us as exhibitors and sponsors, because the more people that attend these conferences, the more they're engaged, the more they're willing to, visit with us and learn from us. And again, it's really just a matter of, continuing to add value to the attendees.
Yeah, and this will be my second one, because I sort of and I had fun last year. I enjoyed it. So that, obviously I'm back, and nothing against Dallas, but I will be looking forward to the one in New York next year. Because anytime I go to New York, it's great. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. But you're exactly right. Maureen's done a great job of creating an opportunity for people to learn, for people to meet new people, and for people to, kind of accelerate the growth and understanding of all the opportunities that are involved in using the right technologies, having the right partners, and kind of learning from each other. Her philosophy of the tribe, I think, is really, really great, because, one of the things that I talk about is, like, we shouldn't be in these things alone, right? Because it's really, really tough to try to have all the answers yourself. So so I'm excited, but
Sure.
we can talk about that over beer.
Exactly. And I think
how excited I am to see you over beer.
The great part about the tribe concept too, which I love, is that oftentimes these organizations are not competing with each other. There's only a handful, usually in each city. But the real competition is around every other opportunity that people have to spend their free time. And the idea of work-life balance is so critical for people, and especially, so what is their discretionary funds to be able to take part? You're not just competing with a local theater or another sports organization, and this has been, the drum has been, beaten on this a ton, but you're competing with Netflix, you're competing with other activities. So it's, how can we as a live entertainment industry help each other? Because I think when we do help each other, we raise each other up and we really provide value, people will come back. And when they're thinking about what to do, their event discovery starts with live entertainment. And I think we all win when that happens.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think one of the big issues, and I know that for myself, I think I'm going to be on like 4 different things at INTIX. But the point I always, even with the podcast, try to get across with is that you're not selling something that's static. You're selling a once-in-a-lifetime experience every time. It doesn't matter what it is you're selling, right? It could be a 3-week run of Hamilton, right? Which the show's going to be pretty much the same every night. But the thing that's different is the fact that you're never going to have that group of performers in the same room with that audience ever again. And you never know what'll happen, right? Because like somebody could flub a line, or like, and out of that flub came like some really like interesting, instance, or whatever. But it's always completely unique. And if you're not selling it that way, it's a missed opportunity, because you're fighting Netflix, you're fighting people with their phones and their tablets, you're fighting, if you're sports, you're fighting watching the game at the bar, right? Or like, at home on your 70-inch TV, if you have, something like that. So you always have to sell the fact that like it's always unique when you get those people in the room together. And you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, agreed. And, we always focus with that on the sports side, that it is a unique experience. But I think that, you always focus on like, which team won. And you know what, to me, the mark of putting on a great sporting event is when people exit the building, they may not even know who won. Because their experience was great regardless. And you need to surround it with, other things that people can do. And I know you're big on this, is creating an experience within the experience. And that can happen in the arts world as well, is you want to make sure that they enter the building and leave the building. And, we often talk about, you're not selling tickets, you're creating memories. And I know that sounds a bit cliche, but oftentimes, with the experience economy and how thriving it is, people are less likely to buy physical goods, especially when they're gifting items. They're more likely to buy experiences or gift experiences. So we need to focus on that as an event, and then within the event. And I think that there's the real opportunity for us to rise above, watching the game at a bar, or, spending a night home, with Netflix.
Yeah. You brought up the experience within an experience thing, and this is what today's Wednesday, January 23rd, as we are recording this. So last night I took my son, 8-year old, to a hockey game because he had a couple days off of school here in DC, and the experience inside of an experience thing is really true because. I know that the Caps lost 7-6 in overtime because my son was like, I wanted to go to overtime because I want to be able to stay out late, right? Because he's 8. But it was like just engaging with the people at the Capital One Arena. It was a great experience, right? They pressed his Stanley Cup patch on his jersey for him. It took a minute. There was like no hassle. But what was really and I'm still like kind of floored because it's not like I'm a stranger in the building, and I know people with the team and the organization, but some guy who didn't know me, I had never seen the guy before, at the end, like just walked up and like pressed a puck into my hand when I'm walking out with my son because they were laughing and giggling even though the Caps lost, and it was like an autographed Nicholas Backstrom puck, and I was like going, I was like, that's cool to me. I was like, and my son's just like jaw hit the ground, and I was like, it's like so little because like how much is a hockey puck and having the thing autographed and like just like wandering around and like just sticking it in somebody's hand and go, hey, have a good evening. I mean, it doesn't even have to be that. It's just like the thoughtfulness that went into the process is I think something that can be replicated, right? It's like engaging with the staff, engaging and being customer focused, and it's something that can be recreated, and that creates that experience, which is, again, like you said, in the experience economy, it's so valuable because people want to feel like they're unique and they're special, and like people want them to be there.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's funny, we had a similar experience. We went to spring training for the first time with my kids. I had been previously, but I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and our goal is to go to all 30 Major League Baseball stadiums. So I also looked at the calendar and said, hey, spring break doesn't line up with spring training for several years now as they're entering school. So we drove down. We're big Mets fans, so we went to Port St. Lucie, and during the game, we got an autograph from Todd Frazier. We also, one of the fans saw how, they were interacting with the game and actually caught a foul ball and gave it to them. So it was, we walked away with a signed hat and a game-used baseball, and it was great. And like you said, you don't need those items. We would have still had an amazing time, otherwise, but, it just, they walk away from that game and had such a great experience. And that's where I, love the intimacy of spring training, and, hope that eventually we'll get to the point where that intimacy and that experience scales better to some of the bigger events. I think we'll get there. I think because we're going to focus on, the event within the event, but just an example, and this is an example of why I love minor league baseball, college sports, and, I would say spring training as a whole, because the intimacy is there, the experience is there, and it just feels really good when you're at the event.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's never been to spring training should go, and I think that the intimacy, it's more difficult, right? Like I know an AudienceView client is the University of Tennessee, which is 101,000 seat stadium. It's tough to create intimacy there. But I still think you can put like a customer focus and a customer spin on things, even at that size scale. Because I think it's, one of the challenges is not the size, it's the intent, right? And I probably am going to sound like I'm trying to sell you courses on design thinking, but that's sort of like the basis of design thinking, which I think is going to be much more valuable and much more important for arts and sports and entertainment venues and properties going forward, is to think about the experience you're creating, from top to bottom in a more thoughtful and customer focused manner, which is, sort of at the heart of design thinking, and it's that intent, right, to create a really awesome experience for people. I mean, at least that's me. I could be crazy, wouldn't be the first time either.
But to use the University of Tennessee as an example, they do a great job as well. There's activities that are pregame post game, within the game. So I think that's really where, the intimacy comes into play. And again, intimacy, is more like the white glove treatment. Is how are you making sure that you add value to your fans? And that could be just a really great seamless experience, could be enough to do that. So I think, also focusing on segments, what is your kids club look like? How are you focused on cradle to grave? What is your accessibility for some of your older fans? So there is opportunities to create that experience within a large stadium, as you alluded to.
Yeah, and I think you open up something that I think people maybe are maybe aware of, but maybe they aren't paying as much attention to it, or they don't have the way to find the data as much as possible. But I was reading a book recently called Soccernomics, which I'm sure everybody's probably they've heard of Freakonomics, and this is basically Freakonomics for soccer, global football, and it talked about specifically how fans and customers don't go through. It's not a static thing, right? Their dedication to an event, or their connection to an organization or a team or whatever, changes and evolves over time. And I think what you're talking about with like the fan club and then segmentation is very important as you think through that, right? Because it maybe allows you to have better conversations and better communications with your customers at each stage of their life and each stage of their fandom. And then it gives you a greater opportunity to customize some of those experiences so that they're meaningful and impactful for the people you're trying to serve. And I don't, again, I'm not like a data scientist or anything, but I'm sure that like most of the tools that we have access to these days allow us to do a much better job of segmenting our data and understanding like what these different segments of the population look like.
Yeah, and we're focused so much on data collection. It's what data are you collecting that is actionable? Because if you're not properly actioning on that data, it doesn't matter what you're collecting. So I think you're right, is how are you focusing on different segments? And, you make a great point about how we'll take sports as an example, but the same holds true in arts. Is as you go through your certain life phases, you actually interact with live entertainment a little bit differently. So how can we be able to better serve or better market to these different segments? So, as someone who has two kids, like I mentioned, we're often, more likely to go to children's theater or sporting events because it is a little more family friendly, as opposed to, Hamilton's or some of those others. So, we're more of on the Peppa Pig side of live entertainment than Hamilton right now. But that's okay because it's a great experience for us. And I also think there's a bigger piece of that is the displaced fan too. Speaking specifically about sports, my wife and I went to graduate school at the University of Central Florida, and obviously, it's a pretty well-known story over the last 2 years how well they've done. We're former season ticket holders when we lived in Orlando, when they opened their new stadium several years back. But now we live in New York, and it's they've really done a great job through their content team and social media of engaging with us in New York. We feel like we are very connected because of the content that they produce. And you know what? When they come to play at UConn or at Temple, we're going to buy tickets and we're going to the game. Now, although that doesn't go into their pockets necessarily, it is us supporting them. And then, my kids are lined with UCF merchandise. Their drawers are full of them. So it's a matter of like engaging with people that are at different life stages, and it does ebb and flow. On another example is on the NFL side. We're big New York Giants fans, but guess what? My son played soccer this year for a travel team, and his games were on Sunday. So I'm usually obsessive about watching every single New York Giants game. Well, guess what? Certain priorities shifted, and I wasn't. Getting to see them all in real time. Maybe I set my DVR for them. They weren't very great this year, so I didn't feel like I lost out. But it is an ebb and a flow. And before I had kids, if I ever told you I'd miss a New York Giants game, you'd think I'm crazy. But it's it happens. And as fans and as consumers of live entertainment, things do shift and evolve or change as you hit different life stages.
Yeah, I have one question here. Is like, so I know you're a Mets fan because we talked about that because I'm a Mets fan. But how did you pull the Mets and Giants out? Because as a longtime New Yorker, it's usually the Mets and the Jets.
Sure. Yes. So it is
I'm
there
joking. You
are
don't have to answer
no
that.
there are it's actually an interesting story though. My grandfather grew up in Brooklyn. Grew up a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, and did shift alliances to the Mets. Wasn't a big football fan, so when I was young, it was sort of by through blood. I was a Mets fan, and I selected the Giants just because growing up in the '80s, it was a team that it was just I guess a little more fun to be a Giants fan. So that's sort of how that happened. But it's true, the alignment typically doesn't go that way. But that's sort of the evolution of it, and and a quick little hit around that.
Yeah, see, these things are real. But to go back to UCF, you bring up a good point, right? They're engaging you in New York, and they make you feel connected. And you made a good point about like not all of this money goes directly back to them, or the return on investment may not be direct. But I would argue that that's not entirely true, because the likelihood of all this engagement paying off, and when they have a request for you to donate to the annual fund or the general fund or any kind of fundraising campaigns they're going to do, I'm going to make a guess that your participation in that is much more likely to happen than to not, because you feel still connected to the school.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's not, although they're not getting the revenue from the ticket sale, the larger play is, as a university, or, when I'm thinking about purchasing something, it's probably going to be directly through them to support their athletics department. So that's a good point. Although not all the revenue is direct to them, they are benefiting from being the brand that they are and creating the content and engaging me, as a displaced fan.
Yeah, and I mean, and I say that as somebody who went to the University of Alabama, and living in New York, you're dealing with one of the same challenges I did, which is that like New York City is not necessarily a hotbed of college football, right? And so sometimes searching out that community was could be a little bit of a challenge. But the University of Alabama has the largest alumni association outside the state of Alabama in New York City,
Yep.
and there would be this huge community of people, right? And you would engage with that community. So then every year, the Christmas party would come around, and here would come Mal Moore Press and Flesh, and all of a sudden you'd stroke a check
Yep.
every year, right? And it was that same sort of philosophy. So I think what you're talking about, and this is, I know we've said we're going to talk about your marketing philosophy a little bit. Maybe this plays into it too. Is that like, I think maybe in some ways we focus too much on the bottom of the funnel things, which are direct response type items, things that we can easily measure, when some of the stuff that like really is important and valuable and has the highest return on investment, but it's less, it's not as easy to measure, or some of those top of funnel things, right? Like you can't say exactly how much engaging on social media is returning on investment for Nick. But I bet you that it's a pretty high return on investment because you feel connected to the school, which has infinite numbers of value. You're buying all kinds of merchandise for your kids. You're traveling to games. You're doing all these things, right? Which is going to build the University of Central Florida's brand, and it's going to continue to build it. But is there a direct return on investment that you can show every day? I doubt that. But I don't know how. I'm curious to see what you think about that.
Yeah, and you know what? I would even say that, to use UCF as an example, I don't know how much they know about me particularly. I don't know, how if I'm a segment that they're even looking at. But so to me, I think that's a bit of a missed opportunity too. Is again, we talk about segmenting. I think there is that displaced fan segment that is very, very largely underserved because they are very passionate. They're big spenders, but what bucket do you put them in? They're not going to be a season ticket holder. They may buy the one-off individual game ticket, and the worst thing to do is start to market to them as if they are local. So again, making sure that you're respecting geos but how do you really, really engage with them? I think it is through social media, through other campaigns that intelligently interact with, displaced fans. And I think that's really key, right? Is everything you do needs to be meaningful, intentional, targeted, and really just ultimately intelligent based on the data that you have. So if they understand who I am, where I live, all of my customer interactions in one database, they're not going to send me certain offers. But when I am coming to, when they are traveling to UConn or they are traveling to Temple, you know what they're going to do is they're going to probably invite me to a tailgate. And it's going to be very specific to maybe sponsored by the UCF Alumni Association, the New York City chapter, like you mentioned. So I think that's what it is to really understand your database and not just do this spray and pray stuff that is so common. I think it's getting less common. But it's the idea is to be intentional and then to use your data intelligently to make sure that you're targeting and engaging with people, where they play, how they want to interact with you. And sometimes it's about them selecting preferences. Sometimes it's about you selecting preferences and how you want to, communicate and market to, any fan really.
Yeah. And you bring up one thing too, is about their preferences, right? Which is one of the things I try to teach people all the time is that it doesn't matter what I want. It matters what the customer wants. And I think we have to keep that in mind. The other thing that I want to ask you about is about the data as well, because I have a hypothesis, right? And sometimes it plays out as being pretty true. It's been my hit rate on this hypothesis has been pretty good. But the question is, do you think that people are using data the right way? And by this, I mean, I feel like you should be using data to test hypothesis, right? Like I come up with a question or an idea that I think might be good or might work. And I use the data to test whether or not I'm an idiot or not. Whereas a lot of times, I think one of the things that you were talking about, the spray and pray or like kind of like least common denominator marketing that's used from data comes because everybody's trying to allow the data to make all of their decisions for them, as opposed to using data to test assumptions. Where do you fall on that idea?
So I think data is really important to help guide you, because there's an art and a science to marketing and running businesses in general. So I think to your point it's around testing hypothesis. That's definitely an opportunity. But I also think it needs to inform how you are interacting with your customers. So one of the big things I always talk about is something that AudienceView does really well is, all the data they collect is actionable. So we'll go and we'll use Tennessee as an example. They're doing, number one ranked team in the country right now for basketball. So they're very, very popular. So say, for example, and this could be any college athletics team or any sports team, but we'll use college athletics specifically. They have all the data on a high-level donor. They're doing a whiteout, for example. That fan shows up in Tennessee orange, and they're sitting, 3 rows back. So what you now know, though, is that they've scanned into the game. You see that they're not wearing the right color. You know what size they are because, you're selling merchandise and tickets. You have all that data. So what you do is you gift them with a T-shirt or a polo in the right color, and they turn out that's a great experience for them. So it's a matter of, real-time actionable data to be able to provide great customer service, to provide a great customer experience. So I think there's different ways to use data. One is and ultimately is always to make it to use it intelligently and make it actionable.
Yeah, that's the actionable idea is something I was talking about with the guy the podcast just before yours, which was Martin Gameltoff from Activity Stream. We were talking about creating moments, which what you're describing is the ability to create a magical moment for somebody, right? Which is like giving somebody the right color shirt, right? Oh man, we saw you were here, and I was like checking on you, and I saw you had an orange shirt on. We were doing a whiteout, so I went and got you a shirt from the team store. Boom. So then you've created a connection. You've created a magic moment that the person's probably going to talk about, even if they're a big donor, right? Or maybe even especially because they're a big donor, because most of the time, if you're not careful, all you're doing is asking them for stuff, and you're not like giving, and it goes back to like what you were talking about before, your connection to UCF, or like what happened to me at the hockey game last night. It's just like it's an opportunity to engage people more deeply, right? And every time you deepen those connections, the likelihood of the relationship continuing becomes greater, and I think that's being able to take action is infinitely valuable, because I know that one of the challenges, not to go off on a tangent, but I know one of the challenges that like a lot of sports teams have faced as they have like collected more data, and they've been partnering with things like Groupon or the consolidators on the secondary market or all these different partners to help sell tickets, is that like they're getting all this data, and the partners are telling them specifically this is who this is what to do with it, and it still doesn't get done because maybe the problem is that the data without action attached to it is worthless. It's just noise buzzing around in your head. And so if you're not willing to take action on what you know, then you're just wasting your time by collecting it because it's useless if you don't take action. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, and I think to your point too, the idea of surprise and delight during these event experiences is really great. Now, how do you make that scalable? I think that's where targeting and segmenting and making sure that you're able to either address people who are having a special evening or people who are high spenders. So as long as you have the data and intelligently even offer some surprise and delight, I think that's where you separate yourselves as well. I just to talk through one of the sessions I'm doing, it's one of these mini sessions at INTIX, and it's about shareable moments. So it's a little bit different than the one you just referenced, but to me, shareable moments is the idea that you're creating or manufacturing moments within an event, either pre, during, or post, that gets people to get excited about what they're experiencing and share it. So it goes back to the age-old, word of mouth marketing. But since we have all these social media channels available to us, every time someone attends an event, ultimately they want to share what they're doing. They're having a great time. The session I'm going to be doing is focused on some low-cost shareable moments, and these could be, really just setting yourself up for success as an organization. So, anything that you can do to make a photo opportunity, or even if it's just guiding people. So it's calling out certain selfie spots, or creating stuff in your lobby or around your arena, or alerting people and creating those, like you said, those shareable moments is indicating when you're going to have photos with a mascot, or any kind of VIP access, or for example, post event or post show interviews or photo opportunities with the cast. So there are opportunities to do these things. So I'm going to take a deeper dive into that and show, what you can be doing as an organization, because ultimately, we can't always joke that we can't always afford a Kardashian as an online influencer. But the brand ambassadors that are really, really influential are the ones that are our customers. They are a prime organic lookalike audience that likely fits your buyer persona sweet spot. So it's those people are sharing out to the people that are probably likely to visit your venue, purchase from you, go to see shows. So it's a matter of creating these brand ambassadors that are, it's really free and it's organic, and it actually is someone sharing your story, and that, again, that age-old word of mouth marketing.
Yeah, and that's what you just said about building a brand ambassador is very important, because this is I was talking to the people from Georgia Tech at NACDA, which maybe be the last time we saw each other. But I was saying that exact same thing, which is that if you have people who are really actively engaged and they really love what you're doing, it's not just that they want to be ambassadors; they love to be ambassadors. They want to share the story. They want to because in a way, they feel like it's going to make a stronger community. And I think that community should be at the heart of all this stuff that we're doing, as far as like live experiences, live entertainment, sports and entertainment is like it's a community, and I think if we as kind of wrap up the whole conversation here is, in the experience economy, people are looking for connections to other people. And by creating brand ambassadors, you allow people to connect with other people. You allow people to build a community. And you, as the focal point and the center of this community, have a tremendous opportunity to serve and continue to assist people in growing that community. And the byproduct of it is that you're going to sell more tickets, sell more merchandise, probably make more money. And, and it's like, and everybody's going to be happy. Because it's not like it's like you've said a lot. You're adding tremendous value to people's lives, because everybody, maybe not displaced by location, but just displaced by technology and the ability to not necessarily see people and engage people in a community type fashion. And I think it's really, really valuable.
I completely agree, Dave. And it's really about creating a passionate community, but also serving that passionate community. And that passionate community isn't just season ticket holders; it's any of your fans. So it's really understanding and intelligently communicating with and offering value to everyone in your passionate community.
Yeah, no, it's great. So now your session on shareable moments. Um, do you know what stage you're on?
It is, so it's part of the inspiration stage,
Mm-hmm.
and so that is I think right outside of the exhibit hall. They list it as the vineyard pre-function area. So that's Thursday at the 31st at 10:30. And then I'm also doing a panel discussion called Ask a Boomer on Wednesday, January 30th. So this is a follow-up to I did Ask a Millennial last year.
Yes.
So I'm trying to, sort of hitting each of the segments, and I actually did the Ask a Millennial session I think 4 times last year at different events, and ultimately certain themes came out of it, and we produced some written content around it. But what I want to do is I want to focus on some of these segments because we all have stereotypes. We all and we're obsessive. We like to talk about millennials. We like to talk about boomers. So my concept with these panel sessions is let's stop talking about them. Let's start talking to them. So I have 4 really great boomers lined up, including Dan D'Amato from FutureTix. And what we'll do is we'll get into a really great conversation around, what are their preferences? How do they like to be marketed to? Where are they active? What social media channels? What are their, are there any accessibility things that they're looking at? What do they like to be, referred to? Are they willing to, request the senior discount? Things that are, we don't really, we make guesses at. Let's actually talk to them. Let's see what they're thinking, because I think people will walk away from it and go, wow, that's a bit different than what I stereotypically think about, boomers or anyone that's, that older segment of our customers. And to be quite honest, oftentimes it's the younger generation, the millennials, that are in the position to market, and you can't, again, talking about it's, you take yourself out of, what you specifically think. This is an opportunity for them to actually learn, how they like to be marketed to, what are the channels they're on. Because if you just continue to use, Snapchat or Instagram and they're not there, and they may be there, you need to learn about it, and you need to properly, market to that segment, because you know what, there's a lot of discretionary spend available there, and that segment is absolutely large and growing and passionate.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And as a Gen X person, I sit there and I just, like Keaton Thompson said on Saturday Night Live on Saturday, I'd sit there and I hate both of them. So I'm joking. Or I watch the world burn. That was the other joke he had. So, but I think it's really good. You can't reinforce it enough, because the trend in advertising and marketing has been to rotate the cast that's going to be producing the marketing so rapidly that it's always like a younger and younger group of people marketing to older and older people, and it becomes very difficult for the people in positions to make decisions in marketing and advertising to understand that, like, just because you're on Snapchat doesn't mean the rest of the world is. Just because you're doing this doesn't mean the rest of the world is, and it's not because they're old and stuck in the mud. It's just everybody has different preferences depending on, again, stage of life.
Yeah,
And
and for better or worse, we oftentimes live in these echo chambers. So our social media channels, we're only used to what they look like. So it's a matter of really taking a step back and understanding. And so my goal is for anyone attending the session is to walk away and say, hey, I learned several new things, but I'm going to take a different approach and understand the mindset of these different demographics, because I think that is the critical part, is why do they act like this? Why are their preferences? We really took that deep dive with millennials last year, and I think people did understand them a little more, and I think that hopefully we changed some minds last year, and people are a little more willing to understand the mindset that goes into the decision making or the behavior of these certain demos.
yeah, and it goes without saying, I think that you're absolutely right, and that people will come away with some incredible insights, just from the conversation, because I think it's really important that you not only, and this goes back to data, look at the macro, but also the micro.
Without a doubt.
Because if you only look at the macro, you're going to get a skewed angle on what is meaningful or not meaningful, what's relevant or irrelevant. And, and I think the conversations like you did last year with the millennials and this year with the boomers are very helpful in putting a little bit of context, a little bit of the micro to help, make the macro a little more relevant to people. So I would encourage people to do that. I want to encourage people to, check you out at the AudienceView booth. Definitely to check you out and connect with you so you can, have a nice conversation, because, you and I, we always have nice conversations. How can people find you on the internet, Nick?
Sure. So just to your last point is we are booth 401 right inside the entrance to the exhibit hall. So please do stop by. But the easiest way to reach out to me either is LinkedIn or on Twitter. I'm fairly active there. So it's my name at Nick Begley on Twitter. So please do connect with me and send me a message. I look forward to interacting.
Yeah. All right. Nick, thanks so much for doing this.
Absolutely, Dave. Thanks for having me.
I want to thank my guest, Nick Begley, once more for taking time to be on the Business of Fun podcast. Make sure you check out Nick at INTIX to see his sessions on Ask a Boomer or on the Inspiration stage where he talks about shareable moments. Also, you can find me doing a lot at INTIX. I'm going to be leading on a panel talking about how we can be more like the airlines. I'm taking part in the technology committee workshop that'll be taking place. I will be on the Ask a Consultants panel led by Dan D'Amato. I will also be doing a revenue workshop. In general, you can find me at my website, though. That's www.davewakeman.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter at David Wakeman. If you have any ideas, questions, concerns, thoughts, anything like that, you can send me an email. I'd love to get your emails. It's dave@davewakeman.com. And if you're going to be at INTIX, make sure you put INTIX in the subject line so we can get together. As always, I want to thank our sponsors. Booking Protect, the global leaders in refund protection. Any listing, any sector, anywhere, Booking Protect has you covered with the world's most comprehensive refund protection product. To find out how you and your organization can offer your guests a better buying experience, more customization throughout the buying process, peace of mind for their purchases, and you can create a new revenue stream for your organization, visit www.bookingprotect.com. Once again, that's www.bookingprotect.com, the global leaders in refund protection. And if you're going to be at INTIX, you're going to be able to find us there. See us in person. We're going to be at booth 204, which is kitty corner to the Ticketmaster booth. I think we're right by the food and beverage, so should be a popular spot. But if you want to make sure you get in touch with us, send me an email. It's dave@davewakeman.com and put INTIX in the subject line. And I'll make sure that you get together, grab a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a drink with me or Kat or Simon. Again, send me an email, dave@davewakeman.com, put INTIX in the subject line, and I'll make sure you get together with all of us. And until next time, I want to thank you for always listening, for being here, for providing me a platform to talk to you and to learn and to share these ideas. I look forward to the next episode of The Business is Fun. I look forward to having a chance to talk to all of you in person next week in Dallas. Take it easy. I'll see you soon.